Greetings and welcome to Elephant TV. My name is Joe Kobofi. Today I'll be speaking to Abdullahi Boru. Mr. Boru is a writer and an analyst of the Horn of Africa based in Washington, D.C. Karibu Boru to the Elephant TV.
Asante Joe.
Great. Always good to have you on board. Today I just want to have a different conversation based on something that you've been doing at the Elephant, curating the Northern Kenya series, and I mean, just even reading the comments, reading even the pieces. One of the things that always strikes me about this conversation is the adage of how we refer to Northern Kenya as Northern Kenya, yet we don't talk about Southern Kenya or Eastern Kenya. In Western Kenya, partly, but it's not really, it doesn't carry the weight when you talk about Northern Kenya. So just as an introduction, where did the name Northern Kenya come from, and why do we refer to as Northern Kenya as opposed to other parts of Kenya?
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be, working on, thinking around Northern Kenya. Like with many things, I think it's a legacy of colonialism, right? Where the northern frontier districts, as they were then called, they were frontier in the sense that they were frontier of the three neighboring countries. On one side, you have Sudan then, now Sudan and South Sudan, but mostly it's South Sudan. You have the Ethiopia side in the northmost, and then on the northeast, you have the Somalia border. So in many sense, it is a function of geography, but it's not a geography without its connotations, right? So to the colonialists, largely the British, the region was of no importance because, like with many Western colonial thoughts and ideas, something that they do not know is always classified as bad, right? They don't know African religion. They say that's witchcraft and juju. You just don't know what pastoralism is because the majority of people in that region are predominantly pastoralist. Right. They just say this one is not very useful to us. And if you look at some of the laws that they passed at the beginning, the Tribal Grazing Area Act, where to limit, where livestock will graze and not graze, Special District Ordinance Act and the outlaying district ordinance. All these were meant to control and manage the pastoralists, them and their livestock. And what we had after independence then, therefore, was largely a hangover from that period where northern region evokes certain sense. One, it's a marginal area. You're coming from the other side of the country, it's north, it's a black box. And it's also looked at through the lens of security, which again is a function of, how colonialists look at them. Like if you read the colonial, reports, right, you'll be amazed at how the colonialists had absolutely total disregard for the region, where the only interest was that side not impacting the southern part where they had their plantations, right? They cannot deal with pastoralists. The environment is not conducive for what they are used to, planting tea, coffee, and pyrethrum. And so they had this suspicion, these people's allegiance, whether to the Somalis on the other side, or even the Pokots and Turkanas, as well as, the people in the up north. So I think that has not changed in many ways, Joe. Just to give you a sense, from Nanyuki all the way up to Marsabit, I think the Kenya Defense Forces, they are constructing 3 new military bases.
Right.
In Isiolo, there are 2 schools and 1 military base. If you go to Moyale, there is a military base, all the way up to Garissa, where they built a new one in 2019. So I think the sense that post-independence Kenya, right, looks at the north through the security lens, where everything around northern Kenya is securitized, has remained. So you might ask, what is in the name? I think the name, it's a frontier. The name also evokes certain sense of, suspicion. These folks are Kenyans, but terms and conditions apply. So your citizenship could be revoked anytime, and it's happened during Moi time for many of the Somalis.
And I mean, just then this securitization of northern Kenya, Is it something that began with the colonial the colonists, the British colonists, and was propagated by the post-independence regimes, or it's something that gained traction post-independence Kenya?
It was, I mean, like what many do not realize is that that was a frontier for the Second World War too. I mean, if there are places you go in Marsabit, you'll find, some of those ordinances. Some exploded, some haven't exploded.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, the war that was going on in Somalia, in Ethiopia, sorry, the British were very careful for that not to spill. You could, if you read the colonial report, you could sense their worries, you could sense their tension that should not spill into this side of the country. So a lot of it was to set that place as a frontier, as a place where can act as a barrier between the rest of Kenya and what was going on in Ethiopia. So I think the origin in many ways was colonial, but post-colonial, it took a different level.
Right.
I mean, we speak about the the shifter war. That event,
Mm-hmm.
it's arguably one of the most significant events that shaped how the Kenyan government looks at the people from northern Kenya and the policies that were derived from that, and the way it's been framed in the media and then therefore the general public, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, the conflict started, and even the name, let's start with the name shifter. Shifter, I mean, like the very generic definition is a bandit.
Right.
That was designed to make the cause for which the people were fighting at that time, to reduce it to just a banditry. These people wanted to secede and to join, the larger Somalia, which was part of Pan-Somalia project, right?
Mm.
And it didn't come out of the blue. The independence constitutional conference in Lancaster, there were decisions that were not made. And they agreed that, we don't want to be part of Kenya. The delegation did not want to be part of Kenya, independence Kenya.
Right.
And the Brits, which is very typical of Brits, they set up, a commission to investigate that. And they recommended that there should be a referendum in 1962.
Mm.
In that referendum, the people overwhelmingly voted to join Somalia. And like with many of these deals that were done on the eve of independence, that was disregarded. And that triggered, the shifter war that as we know it. But what is hardly discussed is that event happened 2 weeks after independence, the shifter war. And the two people who were killed that triggered that, one is Daudi Dabaso Wabera, after whom the Wabera Road in Wabera Street in Nairobi is named. And one was a senior chief from Isiolo. The two guys were killed by, the secessionists, and because they thought that these guys weren't supporting their cause enough. So even the support of the shifter wasn't monolithic. There were distinct. There was separation between people who really wanted and people who wanted to stay in Kenya. And some of the things that came out of that are still the legacies that we still live with. The legacies of, the cattle from that region, particularly in Isiolo, where most of them were taken by the military. The legacies that led to some of those people, because they have been pauperized, because they don't have anything. Their livestock have been taken away. They have been pushed into a village, the villagization process, because they were afraid that they are being infiltrated by the shifters.
Right.
The legacies of those, if you go to parts of Isiolo, that legacy is still with us. And that legacy is the legacy that was carried in northeastern part of Kenya with Wagala Bagala massacres, and the same method were used. Very strangely, and it's hardly, taken up. The same method, and some of the officers who were involved in the 1950s in beating Mau Mau, some of them British, some of them Kenyans, that was the same modus operandi that was used on the people of northern Kenya. And then, you move from the shifter, you moved from the massacres, and now where we live right now in the age of counterterrorism. So there is a strong, link between, what colonialists did to the people in central Kenya, for which, there is a great deal of historical work that has gone into it, but less of, you know, what people in northern Kenya suffered, apart from occasional human rights report, in terms of serious analysis and interrogation, when people of northern Kenya, you know, develop antipathy towards the government, you go to places like Wajir and Mandera, there's not a home that was not affected. You know, people put in, you know, hot, you know, airport and rounded up, all men being rounded up, people being killed, their lives are being destroyed, which is their livelihood. I think that is the legacy. But then again, you know, just for a second, the Vision 2030 and the 2010 Kenyan Katiba then changed that. You know,
we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. Sorry to interrupt you, Boru. Just before we get into that part, which is about, which I want to come back to that about Vision 2030 and actually the interest that people are having of northern Kenya today. But then just before we get to that, is that just to take you back to this narrative that securitization, shifter wars, and people from, you know, southern Kenya, and if I may call them that, have this imagination of northern Kenya. Not one, they imagine the land to be dry, very arid, and all this, apart from bushes and camels, is just a bunch of thugs on one hand and cattle raiders on the other hand. So there's this imagination that we have of northern Kenya. One not only of the people, but also secondly of the place and how it looks like. But if you could just briefly, if you just speak of just the broad climatic, geographical conditions of the space, but importantly also the people who live there. Who are the people who live there? Because every time the conversations around there, it almost gets a sense just from colonialism, like they were I mean, northern frontier, you know, borderline counties, like there was really no one. It was this strip of land, but there were actually people living there. I mean, I should presume. So if you just give us just a brief overview of the overall conditions of the space, climatic conditions, but also just who are the people who actually live in northern Kenya.
Joe, let me just read to you what a colonial administrator, Charles Strange, said about this part.
Right.
The North was another world. Most of the country is scrub desert. Every tree and bush bristling with looked weight a big thorn, which tears at the flesh and clothes. All right. One can seldom see more than 300 yards, often much less. There was no permanent water except for Wasonyiro, Tana and Juba River, and the Lorian. So when you hear, you know, the rest of Kenyans refer to this place as nothing but desert, we only hear about Turkana when there is famine. You hear about, you know, northern Kenya only when there is cattle rustling. Pokot, Samburu, the same thing. I think in that regard, you know, there is a sense that there is a continuity between the way the colonialists look at northern Kenya and the way post-colonial government, of course, and then the general public and the media framing looks at this part of the world. In terms of the geography, it's very diverse, right? You can find the savannas, you can find the plateaus and lowlands, you can find the desert. Just to give you a sense, I mean, like Marsabit is not typical, but it can provide a sense. Marsabit is, you know, sandwiched between two deserts, if you will, where, you know, the Marsabit has a lake, you know, a volcanic lake. If I tell anybody that there is a lake in Marsabit, their mind cannot compute. If you tell people that people in Marsabit plant coffee and miraa, it cannot compute for a lot of people. So I think there is a diversity, and then there is, you know, even within the pastoralist range, there are places where that can support livestock. That is largely cows. There are places that support, you know, goats and sheep, as well as camels that require, that are fairly hardy. They don't rely on water as much as cows do. So there is a vastness to the place, because the place is bigger than Rwanda. I mean, like it's almost, you know, a third of the country is in that part of the world. And so it's a vast place with various, you know, geographical features. But in terms of the community, it's just a very broad overgeneralization. If you look at the northeastern part, you will have, you know, the Garissa, Wajir, Mandera counties. You will find it's largely occupied by Somalis. There are other groups as well, but just broad. You know, Marsabit is Siolo, it's largely occupied. The group with the the bigger group is the Boranas, but you have got other groups like the Gabras, the Rendiles also live there, the Burjis live there. The other, you know, minority groups that live there. Samburus, largely Samburus, you know, Pokots with Pokots and the rest. So I think, it's a mishmash, although certain regions are more occupied by a specific group. But even within that, if you want to narrow it down, you can go to the clans. You will see that Garissa, the three major clans from Garissa are not necessarily the same clan when you go to Mandera, or even Isiolo for that matter, which border each other. So in that regard, I mean, like it's as it can in some shape or form, without really being super narrow, it can represent the rest of Kenya. You can find people like in my town, Marsabit, you can find people from as diverse groups as possible. I've gone to school with people from, Oluoch was my classmate,
right.
in high school. So I mean, there are as many people as there, but then it takes the ethnic lens for purposes of politics and if you will, national census. That is how it falls. And for geography, also climate conditions. It's very diverse. There are places that are super arid with nothing. There are places that have got, acacia tree, upon acacia tree. There are places that are grasslands that you can go from one end to the other and see nothing but grass.
Thanks, Boru. I mean, to take us back to the conversation, is that there's been quite a bit of interest over the last couple of years. I mean, and as you began rightly saying, with the passing of the Constitution, and then with we have the Shilpa number 10 of 2012 that was now to rectify the marginalization of the North, and another factors. And my question is that why is the sudden interest if this place has been, as the media frames have been telling us, where it's dry, it's dry. All we have is just cattle raiders and all these natives who cannot be colonized, running around the place. And the last couple of years we've been having also conversations about extremism, and so why the interest then now? Why the interest now?
That's a good question. I think my sense is, at least from the Kenyan government,
right?
When President Kibaki came in, he realized that the biggest challenge is the national cake is very small.
Right.
And so the national cake has to be expanded. And for that to be done, the only area that where some of these large-scale infrastructure projects that some are trans-country, counties, it's that part of the world, right? You've got adequate land, and land tenure system around that time hasn't developed to include community land. And so therefore that is a place where you can do that. And I said at the beginning that, one of the major, mode of, relations between the North and, the Kenyan government is everything is examined through the security lens.
Right.
The other thing that is from purely policy perspective is the North, one of the biggest damage done to the North was by the sessional paper number 10 of African socialism. And the two architects, the two architects of that is Mwai Kibaki, who is very feted all the time, around, but by even people from Northern Kenya, and Tom Mboya. Every time Tom Mboya is celebrated, I pause.
Right.
He was, an amazing, politician. The way he's been described, the airlifting of majority of Kenyans who came up and took, good positions in government. But the damage that paper did, we can argue that it was a function of prevailing orthodoxy at that time. Precisely. That, you can say it divided economics. Kenya. Exactly. Where Kenya was divided into low, production areas, exactly, productivity and higher productivity region. And the North was classified as a low productivity area where, let's invest in high productivity areas, and that can trickle down to the North. That never happened. All right. And so it froze the time, the region in time and space in its marginalization. Right. If you do not invest in cattle or livestock production, how would those people who are just essentially in subsistence form, how would they, be able to develop? There is no way without adequate government support. Right. And so that is the second element, which brings me to your question around how then, why interest now? Sessional paper number 10, the response to that was Vision 2030, where, you know, by 2030, Kenya will transition into a mid-level economy, right? Middle income economy.
Right.
And for that to happen, you need to have LAPSET. LAPSET
Yes.
starts at Lamu, but it has to pass through Isiolo, it has to pass through Turkana and the rest.
Mm-hmm.
The discovery of hydrocarbons in Turkana, that has to happen only there. So you have got no way of dealing with it.
Yes.
If you look at some of the major, you know, headline, you know, legacy Vision 2030 large-scale infrastructure projects, they are all located in the north.
Yes.
So the question of how a region that you only see as a national threat because you have, and you've set up all these military bases, the region where you've frozen in time and space in development sense now becomes a very important region, because without which, you know, for you to go to the next level in terms of your development cannot happen. So that naturally ignited, you know, a fair degree of interest from the national government. While that process was going on, 2010 Katiba passed. With 2010 Katiba, you know, the decentralization of resources and powers made things very easy. If you look at the amount of money this region has received between 2010 and now, or between when to 2013, when, you know, the county started operating, and now, and between independence and 2013, they have received more money within this period than when they than you know, all the over 50 years. And so what that gives you is, you know, the area being opened up. Marsabit, Isiolo, Marsabit, Moyale Road has been tarmacked, so if you can easily come from Europe, get off at Addis, drive all the way to Marsabit. So that is opening up the region, large-scale infrastructure. And, you know, for groups like Northern Rangeland Trusts, who are interested in setting up community wildlife conservations, they cannot go to central Kenya, where land has been subdivided from generation to generation, to set up that kind of an infrastructure. So they have gone there. So the interest is largely the government, national government, through policy options. And then, you know, you have non-state actors that go into that area as well. For the British, particularly, their training school in Nanyuki is very important, because they don't do most of the training in Nanyuki. Most of the trainings are done outside Nanyuki in the north. And so, and now that makes it very, very, very interesting.
Very difficult as well, because now you're talking about development and people, and not security and this landmass of people where we can just... And so you people that you've classified, region that you've classified, it's similar. You know, again, I come back. It sounds exhausting, but I just come back to the point about it being a tabula rasa. I mean, like, there is nothing there. It's the way colonialists. It's the way the colonialists saw Africa. And I just want to finish with this. The same Kenyans who get frustrated when, you know, somebody from the Western world comes to Kenya and take photos and say, oh, amazing, these people are amazing, they get worked up. When they visit Northern Kenya and they say, oh my goodness, look, these people are so nice, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's the same way, you know, I mean, like the othering of people of Northern Kenya. Interesting. And I'll actually even just to now even continue this conversation about the othering of people of Northern Kenya. One of the interesting things about imperialism is its twin ideas of modernity and coloniality. So whereby it will bring you know, Western progress, or progress within, imbued out of the Western ideologies and ways of life. It also brings coloniality, whereby there are other people in a certain space are subjugated. In the space of Kenya, on 12th December 1963, we gained independence. But 12 or 13 days later, in 25th December of the same year, 1963, the shifter war. So my question to this is that if you could, comment around this issue of, as you're talking about the othering, but also the coloniality, the space in which, in fact, is actually the terrain where the zone of non-being, you know, to paraphrase Fanon, within the Kenyan context of imperialism happens in the north. Then what's the place for the north then, therefore, within the context of the Kenyan project?
Thank you.
Past and moving forward.
I think that is probably the most important question
Right.
For Kenya and Project Kenya.
Mm.
You know, if Professor God said Project Kenya is no more,
Right.
if something has to be breathed into Project Kenya, that is the fundamental question. Where is the place of Northern Kenya in the new Kenya that we want to construct, imagine, and probably bring it to life?
Right.
Because at a very practical level, if the North is still seen as a site where people are othered, where, you know, disease, conflict, famine, Al-Shabaab are located.
Right.
And therefore, it will be either self-contained or it will come to this side, all right? And if the South, with all its drama that is reaching a boiling point, has to look for a safety valve that is politically and economically, that is the place where it has to go. If you want big airports, if you want, you know, new forms of development, if you want relations with the Horn, right, that is Ethiopia and Somalia for that sake, that is the place where that negotiation will take place. If LAPSET has to succeed, money and everything and funding aside, that is where that negotiation will take place. But when you hear debates around 1 vote, 1 kilometer, 1 shilling, then you know that this debate is fraught.
Completely.
For the rest of, when everybody now wants to take over. Northern Kenya doesn't own copyright to marginalization.
Right.
But when I hear people from Kiambu say that we are being marginalized, right? When people say this is not a marginalization Olympic, but when people in that region say they are marginalized, what would somebody in Northern Kenya say? There is not a single university in Northern Kenya, apart from the one in Garissa.
Yes, yes.
There are no big hospitals. Roads, now is when roads are being tarmacked, right? And so when people elsewhere say that, then the reason why this is becoming an issue, at least the marginalization, is because for the first time, the people in Northern Kenya are seeing what it means to be citizens, not contingent citizens, not citizens with terms and conditions applied.
Not shifters or herders.
Not shifters anymore. Not terrorists anymore. No natives who have been colonized.
Who can't be
because
colonized,
a lot of the time, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the time when we think about coloniality, we just think about it being only a Western thing. No, it is also, you can colonize.
It's an epistemological framework, this.
Thank you. Thank you. And so therefore, for me, that becomes then the primary question that we have to wrestle with. Right. If we have to, like, if you look at the people who defend devolution a lot, it's the people from Northern Kenya. The marginalized people are the people who are saying no to any form or shape in changing the Katiba from the devolution perspective. Why? Right. They have seen Matunda ya Uhuru.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So for me, that question becomes a very important question, both for the people of Northern Kenya, who now, you know, after 10 years, they have seen what actually being part of a civic citizenship means in both ways. That is what you get and what you have to give. And secondly, for the other side to see, therefore, look, we can actually expand this.
Right.
How can you invite yourself to a region that for 50 years you've said, no, you are a supplier of all that is wrong with Kenya.
So I just want to juxtapose what you're saying to another question. In a sense, then, I mean, Northern Kenya and the people of Northern Kenya occupy the same space that Black Americans do in America, whereby, I mean, the Black Americans built America. I mean, big America, so there's still slavery, and the Black Americans fought for the independence of America, you know, in the Civil War, and the soul. I mean, it's almost, one can almost sense like every time America moves forward, it's because Black America organized and moved forward, right? You know, we saw the civil rights movement. We saw that last year again, with the Black Lives Matter and removing of the ex-president Donald Trump. So, but then also we've also similarly we've also seen that every time also they move the space, they get played in a sense. They get riffed up from the gains of the space. So then, I mean, because Kenya is in a very interesting space whereby I think even the idea of the hustler nation is getting fruition because of the cake is too small. So then, how should these negotiations happen? In what terrain should they happen? What are the actors should happen? And what should be the terms of the debate, such that it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for everybody.
Joe, power doesn't concede very easily. That is that is the easiest thing.
This is true.
The idea that
Oh dear.
privilege will just say, you know what, in the name of justice, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi wetu,
Right.
let's just give these people what they deserve. That is not going to happen. I think the most important question is, therefore, the first step, the first railguard is the defense of devolution, right? I think I genuinely believe that devolution, if done well, even in its mishmash that it's done now, even with the level of corruption, I am the first one to raise an alarm about corruption in most of the northern counties. Even with that, devolution is probably the best that we got for now. Not just in bringing the pressure valves nationally as well, right? But also at the local level for these people to say, hey, look, we're here, right? That is number one. The terms of this debate, right, it will not be arrived at, through press conferences, workshops that are held in these funds. It can only be determined pale mashinani. And the reason why I'm saying this is if UDA and, bottom-up, Hustler Nation has shown us within a very short span of time, an average Kenyan is super conscious of what is going on. The elite can try to be clever by half, they can do what they want to do. An average Kenyan has always been, his level of intelligence and understanding about this thing is very, very, very strong. So as long as that debate doesn't take at that level, if you miss taking that debate at that level, which is at the county, even sub-county, at ward level, I think it will be a huge miscalculation on the part of political elite, both the northern Kenya political elite, as well as the elite from the other part of the country, to think that this debate somehow can be done kwa kizungu mingi na catwalk. This debate can only be done there. And the idea that they can impose stuff from the top, that is the elite from the other part of the Kenya,
right?
And the elite from Pale Mashinani, they think that they can continue being the gatekeepers, where a few of them, as a token, are brought to the table and they feel like we've been represented. Right. I think those both those positions could actually be very, very, very costly to either side. So, but this debate has to be had, and for a lot of Kenyans, particularly those who are, those who think that it's peace, love, and unity, this debate might sound, oh no, we are being extremist. In real sense, this debate needs to happen like before. Now is an opportunity to have the discussions around this. We talk about wheelbarrow economics, right? How about Mfugaji's economics? You sit jioni in most of the houses in Kenya. The main source of protein is beef. Right. Yeah, fish is there, it's beef. Where does it come from?
Northern Kenya.
Yeah, and so a lot of the time, these discussions are hardly hard because in people's minds, the North doesn't contribute to the GDP. The largest wind, farming is located in Northern Kenya. But you can't tell people that. The largest aquifer is located, the two largest aquifer are located in Northern Kenya, right? And you're saying you want to be energy independent, you want to go green, you'll get it in Northern Kenya. Right. And so the North now is no longer, the site of charities, the site of pity. No, the North is actually now coming as an equal partner, moving forward. And so, there are so many unresolved issues. If the TJRC report, you asked what is the starting point? Defend devolution, implement the TJRC report. Would it be implemented by just appealing? No. That report provides a big picture of how these people are marginalized and what has been done. I'll hand it back to you, Joe.
No. This is. What you're telling me, Boru. And correct me if I'm misrepresenting you, is that really the future of Kenya, if Kenya is to have any kind of future, and I might add even the horn, is actually northern Kenya.
It's the window.
It's the window.
It's the window to the north, and it's the engine, for this country to take off.
And the horn of
Africa. And the horn. A lot of the time, the elite fights, particularly around elections and all these and the tenders. It's just that, everybody's a tender. Everybody has a small company. Everybody has a consulting. Everybody has this. But you need to expand that. And, Vision 2030, if it was done fairly well, it was problematic. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, a lot of it is not, it has parts that could have been done well, thought through better, executed better, including LAPSET. But a lot of, if enough of them were done in a better way, in an efficient way, right. Not, elite from elsewhere coming and buying land along the corridor of LAPSET and making, the compensation that are going to be paid very high, then the project becomes incredibly expensive. If it was done well, that could have opened up the north to the south, right, as well as to the horn.
Absolutely.
Right, just look at what Marsabit Isiolo Moyale Road has done. Mm-hmm. Now there are tour companies that are going there. I used to travel on top of a lorry from Marsabit, where you buy a t-shirt. It takes you almost 2 days. Mm-hmm. Now I can plan, I can sit, I can go to 10th Street in Isli, get my bus ticket. In the evening, I'll be in Marsabit. Done. No acacia tree losing your cape. Falling into Kwenyengombe, nothing. It's clean and sweet, and you hit home without any drama. Think of it as a business person. Think of it as somebody who's going to Nairobi to, do some business and come back. The guy who's running a small spare shop, and that is business that is coming to this side. When they go there, they bring, finished goods this side. Cows being transported either way. And particularly now, Somalia is going to have its election soon. Ethiopia has had its election, and the situation is fraught, and anything could happen, right? I mean, like, Abiy's hold on power, reminds, it has got all the echoes of 1991, when, the Darg administration, the Somalia Barre administration collapsed, and these refugees came to this part. Over almost 500,000 refugees that are in northern part of Kenya, in Dadaab as well as Kakuma. Those people cannot be taken any other place unless Kenya changes its refugee policy. That is the area where these people will stay. So if the north comes down, as it often doesn't, this is where most of this transaction will be done. Ethiopia is a landlocked country, right? In Kenya, you have a port. Most of those transportation can be done through that. Of course, you are competing with Djibouti. But there is a huge opportunity, except South Sudan as well. But that requires the Kenyan elite to get away from, looking at this region as a burden. Right. The northern elite, to look at themselves, not copyright, marginalization by the government, and say, hey, look, actually we have XYZ as big ideas. That can be done. There are cross-boundary projects that are being done, and that can be done and done well.
Precisely. Finally, Boru, as the curator of the Northern Kenya edition, what did you want your readers and your viewers who will read our articles, watch our videos, and listen to our podcast? What do you want them to have in mind when they're engaging with this material?
A lot of it, to be honest with you, for me is really to assault the sense of established norms about this region. Right. The few pieces that you've seen, a lot of people look at, for instance, Salah gave us a piece about, from shifter to terrorists. A lot of the time when they look, oh no, Somalia won't any terrorists. But, Salah is showing you, across time, how these people have been denied their rights. And this is just the latest explosion. What would it be next? It's a question for people to imagine, right? Guyot, looked at, supply chain of livestock. If it's improved, what it could do, not just for the north, but for the country, right? And so really this is a question of, making people question their assumed received wisdom about the region and the people. And so we are hoping that people will engage with them. A lot of it will be critical. A lot of it will make people question, I never thought about that. I don't agree with this. And then we provide evidence. And really, it's an opportunity of cross-pollination of, the Kenya. Everybody says Kenya, one Kenya. But we are not one Kenya. So ours is just to create an opportunity and space for people to articulate, the Kenya that they want and the Kenya that, they hopefully we will all want to create, but that cannot be done absence, all right, of serious discussion, serious conversation, questioning some of the historical stuff that we've received. Just ask yourself, Joe, if you look at the, BGHC, Geography, History, and Civics books, that just shows my age, but also the new books that kids have. Look at the amount of discussions, if there is any, on shifter.
None whatsoever.
And the two guys who have died in the name of preserving the Kenya's unity were people from the north. The two guys who were killed, Wabera and the senior chief, both of them were killed saying, no, we want to be part of Kenya, right? 1980, the coup, 1981, 82, sorry.
82.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who brought it down was General Mahmoud.
Precisely.
Right? He's from the north.
From the north.
So a lot of the time, the contribution of people from the north is hardly even known, is hardly acknowledged. You hear at some of the debates, even, when people look at Ahmed Nasir, and, I mean, it's similar to, when you are in Western countries, you're being told, Rudi kwako nyumbani. That's what people tell people. People tell Ahmed Nasir all the time on Twitter, Rudi nyumbani when in Somali. I see being a Somali is a slur. It's a slur, like shifter, bandit. It's a slur. And it's not just him. And it's been so internalized, some of these things, even people who know better do not. So I think for us, the whole thing should be about making people question some of their received wisdom and assumptions and be able to interact as such. Not telling somebody who's gone to, Marsai Boys High School saying, oh, na kizungu nzuri sana, similar to what people tell you when you go to a foreign university and say, you're from Africa and you speak really good English. You know what I mean? Like, we want to move beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, also challenging the media. I mean, like, there are experts in this region that you shouldn't just be, issues around the north. It shouldn't be just about us saying, hakuna watu that we can speak to from there. Right. There are enough experts to actually talk about these issues in a very nuanced, complex, and complicated way.
Wow. Yeah. Boru, I mean, on that very, very, very good note, I'd like to end this conversation here. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Elephant. Let's have this conversation. And for our viewers, please be sure to catch the videos, articles, podcast on Northern Kenya on the Elephant's website. And please follow us and subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels for more content and more conversations on this nature and others. So thank you so much, and asanteni sana for indulging us.